I'm sure you've heard about the middle class shrinking, growing wealth inequality, housing unaffordability, less retirement savings, inaccessible healthcare, and declining purchasing power. These have become the hallmarks of the rapidly disappearing middle class, which has shrunk by over 10% within the past 50 years. That might not sound like a big number, but keep in mind, that refers to over 30 million people. Not to mention, many of the people who are still part of the middle class are just scraping by. The mainstream media usually attributes this shift to capitalism, billionaires, inflation, politics, and greed. There's no arguing that these factors have definitely played a role in the growing wealth inequality, but what if I told you that there was an X factor that no one ever talks about? Tech. Tech is often seen in the exact opposite light as the great equalizer. It's what gives everyone access to the same information, knowledge, and opportunities, but rarely do people look at the other side of this equation. Take a look at this graph, for example. It portrays the rise of tech over the past 50 years. Now, compared to the graph of the shrinking middle class, you'll see that it's almost a perfect inverse relationship. Of course, correlation does not imply causation, but thinking more about it, this would make a whole lot of sense. On a micro scale, tech has made traditional jobs like being a teacher, police officer, and firefighter completely unviable, as the cost of living in many areas has adapted to tech compensation. So, is this really just a correlation, or is tech the culprit that's been secretly destroying the middle class for decades? Taking a look back, the impact of tech on economics can be traced all the way back to the 1950s. This was the beginning of modern tech as we saw the formation of the silicon wafer industry. At the time, tech was really quite a foreign topic to the general public. It was just something that super smart researchers at prestigious universities messed with, similar to quantum computing today. There was really no commercial applications for tech, and as such, there was really no money in tech either. It was all funded by meager government grants and university budgets, so the industry was really just filled with a bunch of people who were truly passionate about tech. But all of this would change in 1957. 8 PhD graduates who were conducting research under Professor William Shockley would take his research and start their own company, Fairchild Semiconductor. This betrayal would lead to the rise of the entire semiconductor industry, as it led to the creation of dozens of tech companies, including both Intel and AMD. This made tech a relatively viable business by the 1970s, but it still didn't have all that big of an impact on the economy. Most people just viewed it as a fad or as a niche industry. A perfect example showcasing this mindset is Steve Ballmer's parents. If you're not familiar with Steve Ballmer, he was the former CEO of Microsoft and is worth over $100 billion. But back in the 1970s, when he told his parents that he was going to drop out of Stanford to join Bill Gates, his dad said, "What the heck is software?" And his mom said, "Why would a person ever need a computer?" Let's just say those statements aged really well, but you can't even blame them as tech was seen in the same light as crypto is today. Some people swear by it, claiming that it's the future of money, finance, and economic growth. Most, however, wouldn't put much more than $10 in Bitcoin. But it wasn't long until the people who bet on tech early would start seeing massive upside, starting with Steve Jobs. In 1978, Steve Jobs would make his first million at age 23. Bill Gates would follow just a few years later in 1981. But while this was impressive, it didn't really mean all that much. Virtually all of their net worth was just on paper. This, however, would all change on December 12, 1980. This was the day that Apple went public, giving Steve Jobs a net worth of $217 million. This too was completely on paper, but as a public company, the legitimacy of his wealth and tech wealth in general skyrocketed. 6 years later, Bill Gates would take it to the next level with his own IPO that gave him a net worth of $350 million. Just 1 year after this, Bill Gates would not just become a billionaire, but the world's youngest billionaire. It was official. You could make serious money off of tech, but tech was still very much a niche portion of the economy. It was something that young nerds who have nothing to lose like Bill or Steve messed with. Everyone else though had real jobs, if you know what I mean. Fortunately for them, ignoring tech didn't really affect them all that much, but this would slowly start to change with the 1990s. The 1990s was characterized by an explosion in the number of tech companies. The general public still hadn't bought into tech, but investors had. As such, anyone and everyone could get funding to go try their luck at making it big in the tech world, and many did. Hundreds of successful tech companies were started during this time period, propelling their founders into the billions. But that's not really what we're concerned about. We care more about the tech industry's impact on the middle class, and this was really the first middle class generation that got involved in tech. In the late 80s and early 90s, an unprecedented number of people would start majoring in computer science. Over 40,000 people were getting CS degrees every single year, creating a new sector of the middle class. Things didn't get too out of hand though. While tech companies did pay generously, in the grand scheme of things, compensation was still relatively modest. In 1995, for example, the average Microsoft employee was making just under $60K. For perspective, the median household income in 1995 was $37,000. So tech households were making about 50% more, but nothing too crazy. From time to time, you would hear about some tech employee that's a friend of a friend that became a millionaire thanks to stock compensation. But this was more of a gamble than anything else, especially during the dot-com bubble when the vast majority of internet companies went under. Speaking of the dot-com bubble, the burst would completely destroy the tech spirit. Annual CS grads would fall from a peak of 60,000 per year back down to 40,000, as people feared that tech was indeed just a fad. I can imagine the old folks back in the day telling their unemployed CS children that they told them so. They should have just become an engineer or a government employee. While they wouldn't have had the same earnings potential, they would have had far more stability and peace of mind. This was the state of tech for much of the 2000s. While there were a few startups like Google and Facebook that were making strides, the big tech industry had fallen, and it had fallen hard. In fact, many of these tech giants would never recover. Cisco, for example, was at one point the world's largest company, but during the dot-com crash, they would fall 80%, which they still haven't recovered from. It was the same thing with Intel and AT&T and Xerox and basically every other tech giant of the era. Microsoft was the only giant that ended up recovering, but it took them 17 years and a fundamental shift to do so. It seemed like the tech prognosis was pretty clear. Tech was here to stay, sure, but its days of exponential growth were over. Looking forward, it seemed like tech would just become another established industry like finance, healthcare, or education. People would of course continue pursuing CS degrees, but it wasn't in the hopes of becoming an overnight millionaire. The perspective was much more pragmatic. Tech simply paid more than most other industries, and these big giants like Cisco and Microsoft were much more reliable than the startups of the 80s and 90s. This created a new upper middle class, the tech class, that were just slightly more well-off than the middle class. This divide, however, was about to grow to indescribable proportions. It's no secret that tech compensation has gone through the roof over the past 15 years. Google's median compensation currently stands at $295,000. Comparing this to Microsoft's average compensation 30 years ago, we're talking about over a 5x difference, and this disparity becomes even larger when we compare it to household income growth. Over the past 30 years, median household income hasn't even doubled, while tech compensation has over quintupled. But that's not even that accurate because the average household is just earning cash, while tech households are earning tech stock, which over the past 15 years has been 5 to 10 times more valuable than cash. So a $300,000 compensation package from Google is actually closer to earning $700,000 or $800,000 in cash somewhere else. In other words, back in the 1990s, tech people at the top tech companies were earning 40 to 50% more than the middle class. Today, tech people at the top tech companies are earning 10 times more. We should also mention that the term top tech people encompasses far more people. Back in 1995, Microsoft themselves only had 18,000 employees. Today, Microsoft has 221,000, Google has 174,000, Apple has 164,000, Meta has 71,000, and those are just the mega tech companies. Zooming out, we're talking about tens of millions of people who are earning leaps and bounds more than any other profession. And I think this graph really encapsulates exactly what I'm talking about. Tech has objectively eclipsed every other sector by nearly 10x, and that was as of 2015. Also, I'm not just talking about people who are directly employed by these tech companies or even people who are working in tech specifically. I'm talking about people who leverage tech versus people who didn't. Uber is just a regular old taxi company, but combined with the power of tech, they're worth nearly 100 billion. Airbnb is just a regular old rental company, but combined with the power of tech, they're worth over 80 billion. Similarly, law firms are earning 90 million for just a few months of work for a tech company. Teachers are earning millions for teaching online instead of at public schools, and the top influencers are worth hundreds of millions, if not billions. And those are just a few examples. Tech has seeped into every industry and every sector, and the wealthiest people of any industry and any sector are the ones leveraging and investing in tech. Everyone else is unfortunately stuck at 40 to 60k jobs hoping for a 3% raise every year. When tech was only 1 to 5% of the population, this wasn't too big of a deal. But as tech has grown to encompass 20, 30, 40% of the population, and in some cities even the majority, we have started to see a massive wealth divide. And it's not caused by the top 1% or low taxes or capitalism or any of that. It's actually just caused by our peers who made it in tech. Let me explain. It's easy and quite popular to blame some sort of elite class or BlackRock for the pains of the majority. That's not really the case. Jeff Bezos spending $500 million on a yacht isn't causing your groceries and rent to skyrocket. Do you know what is though? The people around you. When someone around you is willing to pay more for groceries or houses or cars or whatever it be, prices are naturally going to go up, and the best example of this is Austin. Austin has always been part of the tech scene as it's home to Dell. But over the past 10 years, and especially during the pandemic, every tech company you can think of has expanded to Austin or has grown their presence in Austin. I mean, just take a look at the companies with the largest office space in Austin. Number one is of course Dell, but then you have Apple, Google, IBM, Oracle, Indeed, and Meta. As such, Austin has seen an insane influx of high-paid tech workers from California and Seattle. Consequently, the median price of a house has nearly tripled, rent has gone up 13% annually, groceries have gone up 14% annually, and basically everything else has become far less affordable. I've lived in Austin for nearly my whole life, and over the past few years, I've seen countless neighborhoods pop up where literally every single person works a remote tech job and owns a Tesla. And I'm quite confident that these people are the #1 reason for skyrocketing prices in such cities. This isn't to say that we should blame these people or that it's their fault by any means though. Like anyone else, they're just trying to create the best lives for themselves. With that being said though, it's very important that we understand the modern economy for what it is. It's not a case of the top 1% versus everyone else. It's a case of people in tech and its surrounding sectors versus people who are not. The modern economy works for tech and it sucks for everyone else. This has been a growing trend for many decades, but we're currently at an extreme crossroads where the options are basically to join or die. And this makes sense, because moving forward, everything will be tech related, and we're currently going through the painful transition to where tech becomes the majority. So, in the end, I don't think the current economic pain is due to money printing or high inflation or bad politics or any of that, though they all play a role for sure. Rather, I believe the current economic pain is a byproduct of the world economy evolving into one where tech is not just a leading voice, but the dominant voice. If you're already part of the tech world, you'll have a great time. If you're not though, the future won't be all that different from a tech dystopia, and that's what's really happening to the middle class. Speaking of the modern tech economy, a lot of people are worried that AI is gonna take everyone's jobs. Check out this video to hear why that won't be the case. But until then, I'm Hari, and I'll see you guys on the next one.